What is the scariest thing you've ever seen in your life that you can't explain? About 25 years ago, my now former wife and I were caretaking a house. We had been there for several weeks and we both noticed that we always had that feeling coming up the stairs from the cellar that something was going to grab you as soon as you turned the light switch off. Everything else about the house was normal. We slept with an analog wind-up alarm clock next to the bed, the kind that actually ticks. To set the alarm, you move a tiny third hand to the location on the clock face for the desired time. For example, halfway between 6 and 7 to awaken at 6:30. It's a physical process, and there is very little way to get it wrong. We always had the clock set to wake us up at 6 a.m. It was not something we fiddled with on a daily basis. One night, the alarm clock went off at like 2 in the morning. Old school ringing bells. Both my former wife and I woke up absolutely terrified. I saw a small figure, maybe 2 feet tall, run out of the room. I thought I must have been crazy until my former wife screamed, "Did you just see that thing?" We both described it as some sort of small gremlin. When we looked at the alarm clock, we saw that the alarm hand had been moved from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. That's the whole story. Scared the fuck out of me. Have no explanation for it. Nothing else ever happened there, but the cellar feeling persisted. I've tried to warn everyone. Goblins are real. While very scary to experience, I'm sure. The idea of some supernatural creature or spirit spending weeks trying to manifest making the basement feel all spooky, then finally succeeding at crossing over to the physical world, and the thing it does is go into your room to play a prank of moving your alarm clock up a few hours before disappearing forever again, is very funny. There's a Japanese demon that sneaks into your room at night, removes your pillow, flips it over, then puts it back. It didn't happen directly to me, but it happened to my dad while I was a toddler. My parents' bedroom and mine are connected by a long hallway. You could see directly into one other room just by staring at the door of the other. So we being kids, Isha, my brothers and me, shared the same room. Our parents arranged their bed so they could lay in their bed and easily look across the hallway into our room. So one night, my dad stares into our room from his, and he noticed that from inside our room on the top side of the door frame, some ugly dark face upside down like a lizard on a wall was peeping from our room staring back at my dad across the hallway. He, being skeptic, thought he was just seeing stuff, until my mom asked, "Did you just saw that thing from the kids' room?" My dad instantly sprinted into our room only to find nothing there. That only happened that one time as far as I know. Once I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. I could see the outline of someone standing there, but when I turned on the light, there was no one there. The door was still slowly closing, as if whoever or whatever had been there was leaving. Even creepier, my Nest fire alarm had illuminated in the corridor, sensing movement, but there was nobody there. Still gives me chills thinking about it. Nest fire alarms are creepy. I got an alert in the early morning hours of cigarette smoke in my room. No one in my home smokes, and there wasn't an open window. It was my papa's birthday, though, and he was a smoker till the day he died of cancer. Mine registered a particularly pungent dog fart as cigarette smoke. They're pretty easy to set off. Such a funny exchange right here. My fire alarm picked up cigarette smoke on the birthday of my heavy smoker grandpa. Yeah, that was probably dog farts. This shit right here is the only reason why I still come to this site. I was riding my bike down a rural road when I was 9 and found a garbage bag filled with red sludge and white sticks. I thought it was blood and bones, but I had a very parental guidance childhood, and I had never even seen pretend blood and bones, so I had nothing to compare to. I told myself it wasn't what I thought it was. After all, why would there be a ripped open garbage bag filled with blood and bones? 2 days later, I thought, look again, and if it is what you think it is, tell a grown-up. I biked back to the area and it was gone. I am now old and have watched enough to confirm it was blood and bones. I'm jumping in because I have a very similar story to this. About 4 to 5 years ago, I'm living right outside of Detroit. Still am. To those unfamiliar with the area, Detroit actually has a lot of areas that are very nice, but the city is still very much a 2 wrong turns and you're somewhere very non-nice. The city I'm in is quite nice, and legitimately less than 5 minutes from Detroit, so I job in the city. I also like to jog at night. It's cooler, and there's barely any people around. Sounds stupid in Detroit, but I know the area well and I don't keep headphones in. About 15 minutes into the jog, I hear footsteps. Not casual footsteps, but full-blown sprinting, and strangely loud. It's dead silence at this point, but still. I usually can't hear footsteps if they're even on the same block. Ahead of me is a large black man, that's relevant to the story, wearing all black, and he is in a full-blown sprint. Think of that scene with the gardener in Get Out. He's about a block ahead of me, and these blocks aren't that large. The man has a full fucking grin on his face and something steel in his hand. All I can see are his teeth and the reflection of whatever's in his hand from a streetlight, and he's barreling at me. I didn't know what to do because while I'm in decent shape and 6 feet tall, this guy is clearly big and fast AF. I thought if I turned my back to him to run, I'd be done for. So I just kind of braced myself to fight for my life. When he's less than half a block away from me, he just turns down an alley I didn't even know was there and disappears. I floored it back to my car. Next time on the news, I see a person wanted for murder that matches the exact person I saw. 6 feet 3, 220 pounds, looked exactly like what I could see when he got close. They found him 4 days later. I've never jogged in the city since then. So in college, I studied in the UK. I lived in a house with a group of other American students that had stories of the ghost of a girl who passed away while living there. I never believed in any of it, but it was fun to play along. The kitchen had one way in and out, and right after you entered the kitchen to your right was a padlocked door to the cellar where she allegedly lived. I had the only key. We were all a little homesick near Thanksgiving, so decided to do a meal together. This required some creative cooking schedules due to small appliances in the kitchen, so one girl who didn't have class the next day offered to stay up late to get the turkey going. We went into the cellar the first and only time that evening to get larger cooking implements. At 2:04 in the morning, I wake up to my door rattling, like someone was pushing against it. I assumed it was a housemate who just went to the wrong door. About 30 seconds later, when I hear a scratchy female voice softly saying, "Hello?" every 5 seconds or so. My window was open, and it sounded like it was coming from outside. So I get up to close my window, as I assume it's some drunk girl walking back from the pub. I get to the window and there's no one there. And then I hear, "Hello?" Clear as a bell behind me, my door rattles again and goes silent. I've had night terrors before, and hallucinate when I have even a mild fever, so I assume I'm still asleep and lay back down. The next morning at 7 a.m., the girl who's cooking tells me, I had the creepiest night. At 1:50, I heard footsteps coming up the cellar stairs. Then the door rattled. Then at 2:10, the door rattled again and I heard footsteps coming down. She told me this before I had said anything to anyone about what I'd experienced. Working in a nursing home for years during the night, and everyone always complained of weird stuff like noises on the top floor. I never believe in any of that, so I was always the one going upstairs to do night checks. One night I was changing a resident on that floor with a colleague, and my colleague complained he heard something like people walking. We were in the resident room, and I had to go to the cupboard at end of that corridor to get bed sheets. And when I was coming back with the bed sheets, I kept hearing steps and like if someone was touching and opening plastic bags. I was so annoyed and looked outside the room and saw a shadow passing the corridor. The issue is that the shadow was so big, like if literally a person just passed by along with step noises and plastic bags. I freak out so badly and froze completely. I had to call another colleague to come upstairs because I was so scared of coming out of the resident room. Bear in mind that I do not believe in those things, and for 2 years I was always the one doing night checks on the top floor and bottom floor on my own. Never had any problem, and never saw something. Since that day, I never went upstairs alone and was always very scared. I've encountered a lot of strange things working at nursing homes too. My first job was in a nursing home that used to be a hospital. The old morgue was in the basement, but the door had been permanently locked since they converted it into the nursing home. The one time I had to walk by it on night shift, it was open when I walked back past it. Very unsettling. This isn't my story, it's my uncle's. A bit of backstory, he used to work on the London Underground doing maintenance to the tracks, tunnels, etc. Once he went into a tunnel with 2 other colleagues. They'd stopped to do something and this man said to my uncle like, "Hey, uncle's name, can you show me the way out?" My uncle, thinking it was one of his guys, said, "You know the way out." I think he was so engrossed in his work that he didn't turn around to see this bloke to start with. So this guy says, "I'm so cold." Then my uncle said he immediately felt dead cold and the air around him dropped. Not sure what he meant by that. So my uncle turns around and shines a light on him. My uncle said to me, this bloke is what he would call a ghost standing there. He was holding a really old vintage lamp and wearing a really old dirty uniform. He said the feeling he got was so strange, as if he knew this bloke was a ghost. The bloke just kept saying over and over again, "I'm so cold, I'm so cold." My uncle eventually said to this guy, "I don't think you're supposed to be here, mate. Can you see a light anywhere?" And he looked dead at my uncle and said, "Can you help me? I'm so cold." I'm unsure if the colleagues came to see who my uncle was talking to, but one of them tried to approach this bloke thinking it was someone in their team playing a joke, and this bloke just disappeared right in front of their eyes. All of them freaked out and ran. They refused to go back into the tunnel. My uncle and 2 colleagues refused to go down that tunnel again. Some other colleagues have said they've seen this bloke, and he always says how cold he is. My uncle's retired now, but says he thinks of this bloke from time to time. And so, each of these stories reminds us of how amazing and mysterious our world is. We can try to rationalize or explain, but sometimes it's better to simply accept that not everything can be understood through logic. Who knows what other secrets await us around the corner? The main thing to remember is that the world is bigger than it seems, and sometimes reality can be stranger than any fantasy. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new exciting stories. Share your own unusual experiences in the comments.